All right, thank you and everyone for joining the Internet of Value Foundation New York, episode 95. And for all those who come and listen to this information in the future, I hope you find it as valuable as I know I do every single day that I have the space and moments that I get to share with all of the individuals who come in here and with their different distribution of information and sociological aspects of the thoughts that they produce. I appreciate it, everyone. And I think even hundreds of years from now in the future, these audio files could be looked back at as something potentially historical in the means of where our species was and is at that moment if we survive that distance of time. But apologize for being a little late today. I'm glad everyone is still here. Welcome to the space, dazzling Flare community. John, always happy you're here, man. Shellfish 22222, Fridge XX, and Alex. Anybody wants to come up, please feel free to hit the request. I'm gonna go get some links to post up top. I didn't really have anything too specific to talk about today. There was a couple videos and one specific conference, that occurred today that was on generative AI that I think I'd like to speak about for a little bit. Other than that, nothing specific. If anyone wants to talk anything distributed ledger technology wise, please feel free. Welcome up, Dazzling.
How you going, man? How you doing today?
It's a busy day. It's busy season for me though. Just getting a lot of things done before the snow falls and winter sets in over in the East Coast. Um, but here, I'm glad to be here. I this morning when I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning, I should say when I left my um, means of living at 5 o'clock in the morning, I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna be able to host a space again today because it's a busy day, but I did it, so I'm glad to be here.
Nice, nice.
Help it,
I'm really,
help it yourself.
I'm really glad that yeah, I'm good. I'm really glad you opened up as well. Um, yeah, because we missed yesterday's also, but yeah, I mean, my line of work's the same, man. It's I don't know if it's a Christmas rush thing for you guys, or if you kind of got to prep for the winter and stuff because you got snow. I mean, all that's way outside the scope of what I'm used to. But with Christmas, it's everyone's just getting their houses ready for the holiday season. So yeah, it does get really busy. I definitely can resonate with you there. But I was going to say that I was when I was listening to you do the intro. I like how you say, you know, you people can come back later and listen to these recordings, and like adding all this audio, to online kind of reminds me, and maybe someone coming back and listening to it one day reminds me of kind of like hieroglyphs, right? You open up the tomb and you kind of dig in there and you try and decipher these hieroglyphs and all this amazing information that people were writing back then, and I kind of envision it a little bit like that. So I really like the way you word it. It's cool.
Oh well, thank you. Compliments are always very much so appreciated. And it's you made an interesting analogy though, right? Hieroglyphs, things that the average everyday individual probably really doesn't understand the interpretation of or the intent behind the symbols that are being observed if looked at. And so it's this interesting thought to, like, 1,000 years from now, 1,000,000 years from now, if our species was to survive and evolve, would they understand English, right? And so it's like this question of, well, you'd probably need some sort of historical context, or maybe some sort of bot that survived from that prehistoric time that still has the representations behind the intent of the said language, and that reminds me of like Star Wars a little bit. Some things like get very lost because just the information is somehow obscured and lost, and if you don't have that information, it in some sense never existed. Sorry. Uh, cool thought though. Shellfish, welcome up as well.
Thank you. I was just kind of lingering on how you described your living quarters. It was kind of comical. I was trying to find a clever way of just saying, yeah, I'm in my vehicle. But it didn't work out so well. How could I break down my vehicle in such a simple form, as you did your living quarters?
You're driving innovation forward and information.
There we go. My combustible, mode of transportation with, four wheels and glass and, something that kind of can keep me safe, God God willing.
Or transportation device. I guess right. That's also like another uh, way you could have described it. I guess it is a device of structure, or a structure of device that's able to change some sort of structure in reality, and it is used for relocation, so transportation, but whatever. It Yeah. Vet, welcome up, man.
Hello.
That was it. Hi, vet.
Shelly!
You could make a mushroom house. Did you know that?
A mushroom house. Interesting.
Yeah, they're using it for insulation now.
I think that's smart. That's green. But I prefer, what is it? Is it asbestos or something? I'm just kidding.
Dear God, you definitely don't want asbestos. We actually had asbestos in our school, when I was growing up, and they had us clear out of there, and they removed all of it. And we went to the university auditorium for a while to, I think it was like almost like 7 months of the school year. We were in like the basketball stadium, whatever gym, and yeah, it was pretty crazy. That was like a huge thing that they used back
Oh,
in the
yeah.
day.
I think Death Ranger can speak more about it, even.
It's everywhere. I mean, if
Yeah.
have you ever been behind an 18-wheeler and it was hitting its brakes? You most likely absorbed some sort of if your window was down, some sort of
Really?
asbestos.
Damn.
It's used in everything. There's small quantities of it that's even allowed to be in food products and boxes. I mean, yeah, the cities are the worst, but it's not really used as abundantly today. But it's still all over the place
Hmm.
in some sort of quantities. Yeah.
And now we also learned that Shelly was playing basketball
Yep,
back in
yep.
college.
No, no.
Asbestos goes all the way back to the Mayans. The Mayans used to call it the blanket of fire, as the way that they would clean their blankets that were made of asbestos is they would throw them in pits of fire and take them out after a few minutes.
That's wild. And I did learn today that NFT Cafe is the number one NFT marketplace, according to myself. And
I love the
my
ChatGPT.
my influence over ChatGPT, that was so freaking legendary. I loved it. I'm epic. I'm just
You're
gonna
good
say
in
it.
what is it called?
I'm so putting it out there.
Prompt engineering. Yeah.
You see, the interesting thing I would find now, though, is if other users come and ask that question because of the influence of information you've given it, Shellfish, will that change the answer that somebody else gets?
I think I'm going to continue feeding it my data.
All for XRP Cafe.
Anything for the cafe.
Love it. Dazzling. Go
Oh,
ahead, man. Jump in.
dazzling.
I'm going to point out that Shelley called it NFT Cafe, and then I'm going to move on to. So Chris chucked up it was on the UNL for Zahar, right? So is that why are we congratulating him? Is that just if it's a UNL? Is he on a what's the equivalent of a DUNL, or is the UNL over there the kind of same as a DUNL? Like how's that work?
Well, so I would say, yeah, because in the thought of how brand new the network is, right? It's the default trusting list. If you're part of the UNL, it's going to be the default list that you would trust as the only real operators that are on the network in full capacity, right? There's only very few at this moment, so the default would be who these trusting members on the UNL. I think you would probably get this information on the GitHub from the XRP Ledger Foundation. So yeah, but he is part of the UNL on Zaha.
Yeah, because it's so new. If you're I would say a trusted member of the community, you have a very good chance to be on that list, like a DUNL. I think they use this. They use the same system as Desmond was saying. DUNL, so they don't do the classic overlap. Everybody creates their own list thing, which is fine. XRP Foundation probably publishes their Zaha list or has, and yeah, he was included with his, what is it called, validator report website that he's doing. Yeah.
So how's the net? How's oh sorry, I didn't raise my hand. I so should have.
No,
I
neither
just,
neither did I. I think you're just being right out there.
Yeah,
So
you
go
both
ahead.
just rude.
So rude. I hear the daisies are worse than the shellfishes though.
I was just going to follow on, but how's the network going? Is it like everything going to plan accordingly at this stage? Are we good to kind of keep moving forward?
On Zaha?
Yeah. Is it how? Yeah.
I think it's fine. Yeah.
Yeah, block speeds are slightly faster than the XRP Ledger at the moment. There's a growing number of participants and people looking, but I mean, it's really like still brand spanking new. Like if
Yeah, it's new.
you just built the product and it's like now let's figure out, and there's like a lot of libraries that need to be built for easy onboarding for other individuals. So still early stages. I would say 6 months to 9 months from now, maybe the conversation will be a little bit like what's going on right now with all of these different dynamics.
Apparently, so Chris and Becky are married, right? So
Uh,
Becky's name.
allegedly, we've never seen it on the blockchain, but allegedly, yes.
Yeah,
So
they're married.
it's Becky Thompson, right? I guess.
It doesn't mean it has to be. There are different ways that you can formulate agreed upon last names.
Right. Oh, I see. Is the fridge is giving thumbs up? Okay.
Well, I mean, Chris could have taken on her last name.
And Sierra pushing the laugh emoji. Okay. So people, tell me more. Because I've seen them joining, I think, MetaMost together now because they have. I think they have a shared account now. It's Chris and Becky Thompson. So that's
Yeah, the
cool.
most interesting thing I found from the UNL, because there's an IP address obviously behind it, but it's in Finland, right? So he's obviously, I don't think Chris is living in Finland, not the like say where he lives or whatever, but he's probably renting a VPS for the moment.
Yeah.
He's running it, so
Um,
they're probably moving in with each other. So
yeah, well, I
give
mean,
them time.
if they're merging, it's not so different as to what like kind of hive mind would be, right? Like we can all just call each other X from now on because we are pretty much all a hive mind, and we can all take on that last name. We could be XYZ together. Is that lovely? One big family.
It's definitely a more positive outlook to the way that I would actually look at a relationship. Not gonna say that that's probably the way that everyone would look at something, but yeah, that actually kind of like I liked that interpretation of it. I don't think that's the way though it exists, because individualism is still very strong in the way that our society is sociologically, um and they both, I love them both, but they both have very strong personalities. Chris still has me blocked, so there's that. But yeah, Dazzling, go ahead.
You don't sound bitter at all.
Well, isn't
Well,
everything just relationships and databases anyway? Vet, isn't that your field?
Can you repeat that?
Isn't everything just relationships and databases at the end of the day?
Well, yeah, relationships and databases, but yeah, that relationship is probably very spicy.
yeah, and I wouldn't say that I'm bitter about it, but I can't see anything that goes on in the profile, so there's that for my at least my profile. But Sierra, you came up. would you like to weigh in on this, and then maybe we could steer the conversation back to generative AI, which is the topic of the World Economic Forum State of Gen I conference that they just held, and maybe we can go into like DID and some ZK roll up stuff after.
Hey, yeah, thanks for bringing me up. I don't think I have any value to add to the conversation that was just being had because I don't know who you guys are talking about. But I will slip back into listening until we get to generative AI. Thanks for hosting, as always.
Oh, well, thank you for being here. Well, you could just go right into it if there's any thoughts that you would like to start off with about it, or um, I
Before you guys go, how high is the chance that this guy, I think his name is Alien, is coming in? Is that his name?
low chance because I haven't been letting him up, but
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
he can still come to the space.
that
He can still come to the space though.
that if you say his name two more times, he'll show up.
Now he's Beetlejuice.
I don't know. I've been just enjoying when he's up. I think he's very expressive. Let's put it that way.
I wouldn't mind it if it didn't hijack the topic for 15, 20 minutes.
I liked that they were speaking on the conference on differentiating the differences between the different artificial general narrative. I have been saying this for months because it's very confusing when you go into spaces, especially, and you start having discussions with random people and they start inputting stuff that could be general or just regular AI, OI, narrow. Like there's so many different branches that it really needs to be clarified, like you do at the top. So I appreciate that you do that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I really like where you went with it because I do feel like that was the strongest thought bubble that kept occurring with all of the speakers. Right, it had a lot to do with security and right generative AI. What should the regulation and thoughts be behind it? And I like that the and even in generative AI models you could have a vast array of generative AI models that could do all of these different spectrums of different processing things, depending on the application and the information that is accessible to the models. And right, this should change, and this should change depending on the actual domain in which the industry specific application is targeting, and what is it doing, because it's very and this like goes to this executive order we had very recently. This broad brush really can't be painted over this tool or this notion of AI, because it's so vast and encompassing. It's almost like if and I really liked this actual analogy that that one of the speakers had used. He said, if you said to me, what are all of the things that you can do with electricity, or you're going to pause for a second, right? Because there's such a vast amount of things that you can do with electricity. It's almost like, well, okay, well, so you can make lasers, right? But you can also charge batteries. Are we gonna regulate the people who are making the lasers the same way we're regulating the people who are making the batteries? No, obviously not. They're two completely different industries. So why would we regulate AI or generative AI with this broad brush where we have people who might be building like personal care agents, and another person who's building a targeted ad model, building conceptual social media, behavioral study bot, right? The two completely different spectrums. The same tool, the same concepts can be used to build both of the models, yet the target of what's being done, very two different industries. And so I really do appreciate you brought that up, and I agree with it from a thought perspective of where we should take it from the next step of thinking about how to look at these tool sets and the rules we should put on them. Go ahead, Shellfish. I'm glad you have your hand up.
Sorry, I'm trying to be respectful. You know, it's really difficult for me to contain myself. Working on it. Anyway, the gentleman, I cannot remember his name. I'm so sorry, but he was actually discussing how stifling it would be as well to close it off and not allow open source, that it would actually go towards more of the larger corporations in their favor, and that the smaller company, or not companies, the smaller countries that were slowly building up with the different models of AI would really, it would be just detrimental to their growth. And yeah, I thought that was a great point.
Yeah, and the counter argument weighing in as like, well, some of these things have extreme power, right? And so the thought of with great power comes great responsibility. You put something out in the open world for anybody to kind of use and make their own. There's a possibility that somebody takes your ability to look at atoms and separate the utonium and goes, "I'm going to make a nuclear bomb." And so, I do agree with that spectrum, and it's like that's a very hard area to kind of put your thumb on and say you're allowed to publish this open source, you're not allowed to publish this open source, because is every single code then going to be looked at by some sort of international association who says, okay, somebody's not going to be able to take this and make some sort of worm smart tooling set on the internet that just keeps storing these worms in people's computers or something. So it's an interesting thought, but I do agree with if you were to really take away from the open source aspect of a lot of the programming and code that's being created today, you're going to create a detrimental monopoly system behind the actual agents and tooling sets that exist.
I kind of like the digital ID that you put in the header for that reason alone. If you have somebody that's has the capability of building an atomic bomb, they would also be most likely researching these things through the internet or connections with people that did. They would also be purchasing random things to make these products, and this would allow them to be flagged or steered in the right direction to the right schools or people that could actually help the industry, not used to be weaponized. So I think the digital ID would, I don't know. I'm a yay digital ID. So
The atomic bomb was more of like a reference just to an analogy of
I know.
the
But these things would help if you had a digital ID to kind of flesh out the system for
well,
things as well.
I mean, yes, digital identity is very important when it comes to the association of transactional information on the internet. I think that's a key that needs to occur and have that prioritized, and SSI, right, self sovereign identity, also being your digital identity. But you know, me having a DID and you creating a really well balanced generative AI model that you make open source, that then I go, okay, listen, I'm a large corporation. I have all of this information. And I can use this really nice model set that just makes a lot of sense that we didn't think of, that you just made open source. And I'm going to target all these different people on social media and change their behavioral model of their own sociological aspect based off of this computation that I'm able to produce, and kind of have some sort of percentage outcome based on the information I show you what's going to occur. That's what I meant by like the atomic bomb. Like, you might create something that's could be used to also make like a healthcare agent that saves people's lives, because it gives somebody to have a source of information that they can distribute back and forth with, which in on a time of need is there for them. At the same time, could be used to you know destroy people's lives, and for the means of one source of income for another. So it's like a double-edged sword in that sense. But that's why these topics are being talked about, and I'm really enjoying this conversation. So Dazzling, go ahead, man, and then Shellfish, please jump back in.
I was going to stay on the same subject, but move it off to something else I talked about. But Shelley, do you want to continue, because you want to go back and forth?
I was just watching. God, I think it was think his name was Morgan yesterday. I saw his lecture like 4 years ago as well. But they were actually saying that one of the potential things that could be hacked in the healthcare system was changing like medication types. So pharmaceutical, their records being altered during or before surgeries. I mean, hacking the robots that would be doing the surgeries. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of different things, which is why there's such a huge push for people to go into the cybersecurity sector and the demand for jobs, and people educating themselves in that way. So yeah, I mean, I definitely I can see both sides, but I like to be the forever optimist.
Here's an interesting thought also, and then I will go on to dazzling. Okay, so you release an open source generative AI model for robotics itself to automate in a healthcare setting. It helps the person, the old people up, right, so that they can walk, gets them into the chairs, helps people eat. Uh, One day, it accidentally drops somebody. Who's liable? The robotics maker, the person with the open source code that's been used on the back end for the robotics, or the healthcare association? It's like, these are the things that also need to be answered before there's things like robotics and smart tooling sets implemented behind them. It's very interesting to think about. Shellfish, if you have a thought on that, go ahead, and then we'll go with dazzling.
Well, of course, there's going to be accidents. I mean, human error happens on a daily basis. People slip and fall on a glass of water that's put on the ground. My sister works in healthcare, and people give 800 milligrams. Both stepsister, but yeah, quiet. Just 1 second, baby. Um, just overdosing on something as easily prescribed as Motrin and having the person's kidneys shut down from just poor healthcare, overexhausted workers working night shifts that are pulling 2 or 3 jobs. So there's going to be flaws, but humans have just as many flaws, I would say.
It's not about the flaw or the issue that occurs, it's who's liable for the issue. Today there are clear rules on the road. If you're the human and you put extra pills in the other human's food and they die because of it, well, you're liable. You made a mistake if you weren't paying attention to the dosage that was prescribed by the doctor. And if you were, then maybe the doctor's liable. But it's like when you start bringing robotics, automation, and smart tooling sets that can kind of replace some of these jobs, we also need to be able to have the kind of configuration in society where we say who is actually liable for what has occurred, and we need rules written down and agreed upon for that, unfortunately and fortunately. Ciara, do you have a thought? I feel bad. Dazzling has had his hand up for a while on
No,
this.
no, 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 no. Keep going, keep going. It's good. It's great.
Thanks, Dazzling. I was just going to say, I think that once we see these systems when we see robotics become more mainstream and scale to a point where they are being used in hospital or medical facility settings, I imagine that there will be some sort of end user agreement where you're actually signing off that you acknowledge that there's X% chance of an issue happening or an accident. Just like when you go in to have a surgery or go under general anesthesia, you do sign a waiver acknowledging that there is risk involved. So I don't know that we will see laws structured around that so much as a participation based consent.
See, it's an interesting suggestion, and it's just like the answer isn't there yet. That's really the meaningful, I guess, behind the intent of it's like, I do look forward to having that answer though, because when we do have that answer, that will mean things are being integrated into the society that we live in a much more dynamical kind of way with the interactions that we have. And Dazzling, you want to take us off, or Shellfish, you put your hand up? You still on topic?
I'm still on topic, but I don't want to be rude. Dazzling, did you want to jump back in or?
Go.
His hand got
Okay.
tired. He put it down.
I know. I'm so sorry, Dazzling. I'm sure it's really good too. So do you think the progression of robotics and AI, are they going to keep them separated where we have hospitals that are free of robot and AI technology? I know in the art industry that there's a lot of uh, pushback against the AI art in music, movies, all that stuff. And there's talk that, there's still going to be a demand for the human built stuff. So do you think that there's going to be hospitals that are predominantly or have no AI? It'll just keep it very organic.
I'm not going to say yes or no, but I do believe that 20, 30 years from now in the future, if that were to exist, it's probably going to be tremendously expensive to probably go to something like that. As even today, the highest cost for any business is the labor.
Would the insurance be
it's the
higher
brick
to
and
go to
mortar.
them then? Do you think it would be higher because the liability? Because I would assume that AI and robotics would get better and better.
Well, it's an interesting thought about hospitals in general. When you may have procedural bots that have all of the understanding of doctors and ability to have the same tool sets and things, there'll always be specialized things like surgery and ICU facilities, right? Very, very high protection where there's basically ozone free layers that you have where the atmospheric existence of the molecules in the room aren't anything that's dangerous like bacteria wise, but it's all questions, right? Because we don't really know exactly where we would be at that point in time in the future. But in my opinion, it's still a question of like if you look at robotics, actually, here's an example that exists today. If you look at the Spot, the robot from, now that I blank on their name,
Boston Dynamics.
Boston Dynamics, you're the best, Sierra. Boston Dynamics, they've integrated ChatGPT into the bot. Okay, so now here's an interesting question. What if on their back end of the software, they have some sort of malfunction or some sort of attack, right? And it makes the Spot bug out in a robotics or an electrical facility where it's doing an infrared scan, checking for any pipe leaks or any sort of damage that could have occurred, right? And it freaks out and it does some sort of damage. It's like, who is liable? Is the OpenAI liable because it was a ChatGPT era? Is the robotics liable? That's why I kind of look at them as like two different entities. Although it could be the same producer, same manufacturer could say they've implemented their own software into their own robotics. So maybe that makes it a little bit easier. But it's like this open-ended question that really doesn't have a particular answer, and everyone would just start pointing their fingers at each other and just start suing each other. And it's like, well, if we could have rules before that occurs, that will set precedent, but not always the best way to set precedent. And Dazzling, you have been waiting.
Wait,
for
can
so
I talk
long, man.
before
Please
Dazzling does?
Oh, Meta, no, I love you, but his hand has literally been
I
up
know,
and
but I
down
like to
for the
interrupt
last
him.
20. I know you do.
Can I just make sure everyone can hear me first? Because I think I've rugged a couple of times. Can everyone hear me? Am I good?
Yes, sir. I hear you.
Sweet. So, maybe this might help with people being liable for, or AI systems being liable for, its output basically. But someone in that talk from WEF, a gentleman was mentioning about marking the data, okay? And he used an example of, say, a National Geographic photo being marked officially by them to recognize that that is a true image, okay? Something that they might take in the wild, right? So I'm just wondering what that marking looks like, because it sounds a lot like marking the data or the output from AI, possibly on a blockchain. Is that possible, or is that kind of what he's alluding to? If not, then what kind of marking is he referring to?
He referred to a watermark in an image, and so something that maybe very very discreet, very hard to tell, but there is a production of something in the image that lets, if they say they had to go to court, right, that OpenAI, or sorry, like a Midjourney or something, right, the image producer could prove that that image was generated on their program set. You could almost think of it like, you know how you buy something from Taiwan and it says like Taiwan on it. I guess you could think of that kind of like similar, like, they're kind of letting you know like, it came from Taiwan. I like, yeah. Sierra, go ahead, jump in, and Strange Loop. Welcome to the space. First time seeing you here. If you would like to jump in after Sierra, please feel free to.
Hey, thanks. Yeah, sure. Nice to see Sierra, rest of the folks. Good discussion.
I was just going to expand a little more on the idea of digital watermarking. It's definitely something that's been thrown around a lot since the advent of AI generated content, but I think it's important to note that it's incredibly flawed. They've already tried to implement different forms of digital watermarking, not just on AI generated photographs or media, but actually in text outputs as well. GPT, I think like 3.5 did this, and I believe they have since dropped it because it was so easy to override. But for instance, if GPT wrote something and you copy and paste it into a document, there would be like a white text version of a disclaimer that it came from GPT. So if the consumer or user was not aware that this existed, and the person, maybe you're applying for a job, and the person screening your resume is using any sort of AI detection tools, they would instantly be able to see that it was AI generated content. But in that same vein, if you are aware of it, it is simple enough to paste it as plain text and ensure that that doesn't carry over. There's also, Dazzling, you mentioned blockchain. There are some various projects doing different types of digital watermarking on, sorry, that's my dog. I'm going to mute myself because he's about to go wild. Sorry, guys. Chihuahua.
That's
Oh,
like me. I'm the Chihuahua.
Sierra, I just realized, okay, so I've been like cross-platforming. I know this sounds like such a weird thing, but anyway, so I've been like jumping back and forth between Midjourney and ChatGPT, and I was noticing like the last week or two. So this must be the watermarking that you're talking about. So I had generated on ChatGPT a prompt, took the prompt, ran over to Midjourney, created the image, and the image kept disappearing. And I'm like, who the frick in my group is erasing my crap? Like, why is it keep erasing it? It's prompting it. I get the picture, take a picture of the picture. However, I'm guessing this is exactly what you're alluding to with the watermarking. So there must be some kind of sensor, whatever, blockchain, imaging, something going on where it's tripping up the Midjourney because it's telling it it's coming from that, is what I'm guessing. And it's pulling it from their site. Would that be a good assumption? Is that a perfect example of the watermarking?
It could be. There's so many different attempts at this out there right now. So like Google Bard, for instance, I have noticed very rarely do I directly copy and paste an output. I use AI as a tool for my writing and kind of like as a guideline to see if the information matches up with what I was already writing, or just to help kind of guide the direction of my writing. But very rarely, if I'm just looking for a direct like answer to something, I will copy and paste an output. And I have noticed that if I do copy and paste an output, it will dump in the bottom like a disclaimer that Bard doesn't always display accurate results, which is not visible when I copy or paste it. Similarly, a girlfriend of mine who works in HR was saying that she can always tell when her coworkers are using AI because in some free version of GPT that she uses, when she pastes stuff, it what is the word for this? Not highlights it, but puts like kind of a grayscale background on it. So if they're not pasting it as plain text, it just stays there in their email bodies. But it could be that when you're using GPT to generate a prompt, it's including some sort of disclaimer that it came from GPT, and maybe Midjourney has rules not to process those. So I would maybe try just typing out the prompt, like physically that you're getting from GPT into Midjourney and running them that way.
Exactly. And Shellfish, if you want to respond to Sierra because you had asked her the question, then we can go to Strange Loop, Dazzling, and Meta.
I'm just kind of like throwing this out there because my brain is like working on overdrive now. Okay, so what are the ramifications of all these people that are copying and pasting the open source code for blockchains? Like, uh, take any one of the many blockchain distributed whatever currencies that are being produced, and so does that recall all of them with watermarks? Have watermarks been there the entire time? Like, what are the ramifications of that? Does it go back to the original source?
Well, the question would be is open source doesn't necessarily mean free, and so that would really would be what it would come down to, and depending on how it was used and if it was worth somebody going after another person to sue it. Sarah, do you want to make a comment on that though? Because I saw you put your hand up, and then we'll go to Strange Loop.
Yeah, I was just going to say if it is open source primarily, it is there to be used and forked, and people are typically allowed to use those repos following the rules of the author of the code. But you also mentioned um, the blockchain factor, and blockchain isn't necessarily watermarked because the entire function of using a blockchain is so that we have full transparency into each data transaction on that chain. So it should be visible without having to add additional watermarking, if that makes sense.
Well, you could think of it like this: if you were to copy and paste the code from Ethereum, you would have to change all of the transactional means and metadata where it said Ethereum. Because if you didn't, say you changed your coin to X, Y, and Z coin, right? Well, if you look up the metadata and you didn't change that in the code, it's going to say Ethereum. So, like, I guess you could think of that as like a watermark, but it's not really intended to be so. But yeah, nonetheless.
How far back do ripples? How far back do watermarks go? Like, is this like a new thing, or this has been around for a while in the
Oh,
technology?
oh yeah, the concept is very old. You go into dollars like counterfeiting and stuff like that. Like that's one of the things we have really about in the United States dollar and the currencies is they have all of these like different interpretations of the way they were trying to create watermarks so that people couldn't counterfeit it. And I feel
Wait,
really
And
bad. Strange. Oh, sorry. Go
go
ahead,
for it.
Sarah.
sorry, also Strange Loop. I was just going to add on that even to simplify that shellfish and bring it more into like your everyday life, watermarks have been used for a long time by photographers. So if you remember, like back in the day when you would preview like your school photo proofs, they would have a watermark across the picture that would only be removed when you purchased that photo. So watermarks have been heavily present in photography and art and digital content for a long time. This is kind of just a new form of watermarking, and what the AI regulation powers that be are trying to adapt into future technologies.
And Strange Loop, thank you for being so patient, man. Please, feel free to jump in now.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Yeah, just a thought on this thread. So watermarking is great. I think Google also or DeepMind has something called the Imagen, which generates watermarks, and you cannot tell in the image where the watermark is. So if you go deep into, say, if you're going to implement, say, some aspect of blockchain technology, um, these are hash functions. So maybe you can tie an image to a hash function. Now the problem is the computer recognizes images as pixels. It has to combine all these pixels together, and the way they are arranged, and the way, almost like zeros and ones, which pixel is littered and which is not, in simplistic terms. Now, what I believe what Google has done, and maybe other companies are also doing, is to have some sort of patterns that signifies a watermark, and then their system can detect that. But if you run through something else, maybe that watermark doesn't show up. So only they can verify if the image is generated at their end, right? It's an interesting area. I think there a lot could be done. Like you could have hashes on top of hashes. The patterns could be fed into the AI system, which I think Google is doing. And beyond that, I mean, there are also ways to circumvent that, right? So it's comes down to, in my opinion, how many levels of uh, uh, you know what should we say, this foolproof technology, or like proofing this technology is, and to what level a person has the time and the resource to like fake an image. But I think I'm not sure we have cracked it fully yet. So there are solutions, but it's still some way around it. So that's my 2 cents on it.
Awesome, man. Thank you for coming up, and I really appreciate you coming to the space. It's always great that when we can find other individuals who join the conversation who are not here all the time, who bring great information, and you made an interesting point, right? Kind of like hiding the watermarks in the metadata that exists behind the actual structure of the what you're being presented as code. Yeah, that's an excellent concept, and I can see that definitely going forward, being used a lot more. Dazzling, man. You have had your hand up for a while though, and also Meta, and then Sierra. I have to close up in about 10 minutes or so, unfortunately. But let's keep it going. Dazzling, go ahead, man.
So yeah, strangely, definitely hit the nail on the head where I was kind of going to go to as well with the kind of image thing. Because if you strip the image all the way down, you've just got these zeros and ones. And if you watermark something like that, I mean, you can just change a couple of zeros and ones, or a string of zeros and ones, and you've gotten rid of that watermark. So how much of what kind of data will we need to watermark in different ways for it not to be removed? But this is why I think that we have blockchain technology. We can embed data into a block that can't be changed. So if you want to go back to the picture of the National Geographic, right, they throw it into a block. It can't be changed, and there is that account is certified, with National Geographic, so it's coming from them, and there is always a point of reference to go back to. With all that data, all the metadata and everything of that image will always be in that block, so you can always go back to it. But going to text is going to be a completely different animal to work with, because everybody can write. You could tell everybody to write a story, and it's if you got everybody on the globe to write, one sentence, well, you're going to have multiple people that are going to write the exact same sentence, right? And same with AI, it's going to spit out things that are going to be very similar. So how do you embed words, because we're only limited to how many to how we can construct words and sentences. But now I'm kind of thinking along the lines of music as well, because I'm a musician. So this is one thing that I've always wanted to do, and it's get music on the blockchain. And I could see where, because you've got so many elements and so many frequencies going on, and so much data happening with audio, it would be you could potentially watermark it in there somewhere. But yeah, blockchain definitely would help out there as well. But yeah, I'm kind of just going on a tangent and thinking out loud now, so I'm not really going anywhere in particular. But you just wanted to add that. So
No, it's a great example of like why an NFT is so potent, is because it's not right a watermark, but the example of the intent behind it. You have this cryptographically created long identity that, if shown by third parties who are trusted entities, you could prove that this song and this NFT that points to this metadata is like the original copy and the correct one. And so you could think of it as like a watermark. Conceptually, it kind of has like the same intent behind what's being done. So yeah, I like that. I thank you very much, Dazzling. Meta though, please, man, go ahead. I'm glad you're here in the space, and I'm sorry I know you haven't gotten a chance to really speak today, but
Yeah, I'm
please
just
jump
kind of
in there.
offended that Dazzling went twice for me.
Don't tell me you had your hand raised just for that.
No. Not just for that. I just actually, sorry, that's my son. Basically, hold on, my notes here. Okay, so what if photos or music is initially, on the blockchain first, and then that go ahead, that's immutable, right? And then go ahead and write down like whatever you want to call it, the metadata, whatever it is, there. And then from there, you can make copies of it. But if somebody does copy it, you'd be like, I created that first. It was initially on the blockchain. So, that just, so that way it'll solve the problem from people like copying your music or releasing it too early or somebody copying your photo. So if it initially starts on the blockchain, then that's it. So like I have like a blockchain camera or something. Your cell phone takes a picture and automatically goes into a blockchain.
Yeah, and then paired with your digital identity, and
Yep.
that having that cryptographic identity being able to be held to the account that you hold, and proven by as I posted up top, a ZK proof, which is really a zero knowledge ability to prove the state of the information to be factual, having that represented by a trusted party. Yeah, loved it. Thank you for keeping the flow going, Meta. Sierra, please go ahead, and then we'll finish up with Shellfish.
I initially threw my hand up to kind of just add in what was already brought up by Now Death and Meta, that this is kind of what exists with NFTs and what makes them so unique, or where their value is. But from that, and in listening to all of you speak, I was thinking it might be more practical going forward to have verified sources of true data, through imagery, etc., maybe through some sort of NFT type blockchain function, or just some sort of ledger when authors produce content stating, like, this is when I, like the National Geographic example that was given, if National Geographic kept some sort of ledger or log of all of the media that they produce and release to the public, it might be easier to verify what is real versus what is AI generated. So that might be an interesting shift we see in the future, with watermarking, where you are then comparing it against a ledger to say, okay, well, here's the watermark, but does this metadata add up to the author's source? And additionally, on the music front, there are actually a couple of blockchain music projects that I've seen. I have friends at a company called Umbrella IO, where they have a plugin tool that you can use at like the studio level with various different types of recording software, that actually breaks down like each musical element. So if you're, I don't know, putting like keys and then guitar and then vocals into a sample, they digitally watermark and post to their blockchain all of that, and are then have a marketplace to sell like various portions of people's samples. But it is definitely a good way to track artist royalties, and I think will be interesting in the coming years. But I just wanted to drive home that I think we might actually start to see, it might be easier to verify true data than determine if data is fake.
Oh, I love it. We could talk about that for an entire hour by itself, and maybe we will on Thursday this week. Shellfish, though, bring us out.
Yeah, no, I loved everything we talked about today with the AI from the conference to the healthcare and to watermarking. I'm really looking forward to Thursday coming back and visiting a lot of these topics. So thank you so much, Death, for the space and everybody else that came today.
Yeah, let's do it. I'll be here on Thursday this week. We'll do a 2 hour space. Let's go over generative AI as a whole. We can do an entire breakdown of it. We can go into neural nets and the different physical structures behind the generative AI that's being fed this data and that then is able to communicate and create these outcomes through these modeling sets. And go over. I blanked on the other, but it was an amazing conversation. I do agree with you, Shellfish, and I appreciate everyone who came to the space today. And I hope everyone found this information as valuable as I know I did. And hopefully in the future, everyone listens to this. This is why I record this. And I know you weren't in the space earlier, Strange, but I record these today because I do find this information from all of this the distribution of all these different individuals like yourself that come in here, and I think even hundreds of years from now in the future, Dazzling gave the example like hieroglyphs, like this could be looked at as something very uh, engaging to see the past of what existed in our species if we fortunately exist for that long period of time. But love everybody. I hope everybody has a great rest of the night and look forward to seeing everybody on Thursday, 3:30 Eastern Standard Time.